Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inside Unreal, a weekly show where we learn, explore, and celebrate everything Unreal. I am your host, Tina, and today with me I have two members of our wonderful Epic team here to talk about the latest 5.5 release and some of the cool features that came out with it. There's a lot that did come out with 5.5, so I want to stipulate right now that there is no possible way we could cover absolutely everything, but they're going to be going over quite a few things and bringing up some really interesting demos, walking through how some of the features work with you, all that good stuff. So I don't want to take too much time of this, but we do have some links that I want to make sure we toss down in chat here, just in case any of y'all haven't had a chance to read them. We have our 5.5 release notes that go over the big key features, big changes there. We also have a 5.5 release blog that we'll toss in there. And then there's also a bunch of new fancy 5.5 documentation for any of those that really want to dig in, get the real meat of the tech, dive in, learn as much as you possibly can. So we're about to flood the chat with all the links you could ever possibly need. One last thing I want to make sure that we toss out there is actually from Unreal Fest. It was our Future Features 5.5 and Beyond talk, which also goes over at a pretty good high level a lot of the features that we'll talk about today, as well as some that maybe we couldn't cover, and just some plans for the general future for the engine and all that to look forward to. With that in mind, let's go ahead and introduce our wonderful guests for today. So starting off, Frederick, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, Tina. Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name is Frederick Nielsen. I'm a technical product management director. Well, that's a mouthful. For animation tools. So it includes the animation authoring and rigging tools and sequencer and retargeting and all that. So me and a couple other product managers, we kind of handle that group collectively. We work closely with engineers on features and functionality and core features of the engine. With a goal. Our goal in our group is to make great characters and make great performances in animation and be able to animate fully in the engine, everything from gameplay, cycles, cinematics, short films, hopefully feature films one day. So we're definitely headed in that territory, in that realm. And it's exciting. We're making a lot of great progress, and 5.5 I'm definitely really proud of. I think the team has really stepped it up and come together, and we put in a lot of great new functionality. And we're going to continue that on to 5.6 and 5.7 and beyond. So we have a lot of cool stuff planned. So I'm going to show a bunch of stuff today just around animation tools and some of the deformers and some of the other functionality we've been adding. Quality of life is becoming a big part of our story. We want to focus on quality of life. We want artists to feel comfortable and make sure that everything we add is working as you hope it should. And yeah, that's it for me.
Awesome. Very excited to have you here. Thank you so much. And then Daryl, now it's you.
Hey,
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
absolutely. So, hello, everyone. My name's Darrow Bear. I also work with Frederick a fair bit on some of these tools. I'm on the technical marketing side, so I take all the great work that those guys do and try to create assets and demos and content that highlights the features and values and benefits that those tools bring. So I do a lot of the events on Real Fest we worked on pretty recently, and this is a data set that we'll be looking at today to show some of those improvements have been made in 5.5 that I put together for Unreal Fest. And it's a great release. As Tina said, it's jam-packed. It's got so much. We're going to be just scratching the surface on things, basically showing what we were using to work on the demo pods at Unreal Fest, as well as a sneak peek video that you all may have seen. It was live streamed, so there's a chance that you've seen this content from that. And if anyone happened to catch the features highlight video that came out, that's the type of work that I work on normally. It's like making those feature highlights videos and kind of pulling together all the different exciting new things in the editor and distilling it down into a little tight message about why we're excited about it. Some of these assets were inside of that demo that launched, or that video that launched just a couple days ago when 5.5 finally dropped. So I'm going to be talking about a few things. We're going to start off with rendering. We're going to talk about control rig. Then I'll hand it over to Frederick to do some animation stuff. Then we'll circle back after Frederick's gone through a whole bunch of animation stuff. And I'll just lightly touch on choosers, mutable, and some of the things that we've been working on dynamics. So most of what I'm showing is pretty high level presentation. This is similar to the types of things that I'm normally working on the marketing side. Like they're not super deep dive, like get into the nuts and bolts tutorial. It's more of like, this is what the tool does. This is the value that this brings. And this is why we're excited about it. And rendering obviously has been a pretty big story for us at Epic for quite a while. It's one of the things that we always like to lead with because man, those rendering folks are just doing such a great job. I mean, the release after release after release, it just gets more visually appealing. It gets faster. There's things that, they say, oh, we can't do that. And then, next release, they come around and like, hey, we solved that problem. So 5.5 kind of continues that. Things like Lumen now just had a really nice performance improvement. Its hardware ray tracing's on by default. They've been continuing to work on getting the rendering kind of pipe and everything that Unreal uses to create those pixels on screen more parallelized and threaded and more optimized. That's seen a lot of work also done in 5.5. So all of that adds up to obviously faster gameplay, faster iterations if you're doing nonlinear content. The ability to turn the knobs and the quality up higher all is a benefit of things that happen as algorithms get better in the engine. And we've got some exciting new features that we'll talk about really quickly with MegaLights. I'm sure you guys have probably and girls have probably seen MegaLights talked about out there on the internet, or maybe you were at Unreal Fest and you got to see those demos live. It's pretty exciting. It does some really interesting things. So yeah, that's basically what we're going to be going over for. Why we don't have any idea how long it's going to take us to talk about all this stuff because we're just doing it on the fly. Very live demo. So hopefully everything works. If it crashes, Frederick gets to start earlier. We'll see. I think it's going to be
Yeah.
fine though. It should be fine. I am on a brand new computer, so we'll have like a warning of my fans kicking up, and then I know I'm in trouble. So as long as the fans don't go nuts, I think we should be fine.
Yeah.
So
We'll collectively cross our fingers and see what
yeah, it's
happens.
gonna work out. It's a good day. Unreal came out this week, so what it's
Yeah.
already a win of a week for me.
Yeah.
Um, so with all that said, this is the project that I built going into Unreal Fest to sort of try to encapsulate a lot of what was new in 5.5. So it's a pretty big scene. It's obviously got this really nice terrain done. It's got a spline-based road, little spline-based poles that kind of go way down, and the road goes on forever, which is kind of fun. And most of what you're seeing on screen, I just get stuff and I bash it together, right? Like I said, I'm in marketing, so I'm just trying to make stuff look cool as fast as I possibly can. So I'm looking for that low hanging fruit. So a ton of assets came off of Marketplace, like the diner came off of Marketplace. This little gas station, another Marketplace asset, as well as the actual terrain. All that stuff was Marketplace assets that I just grabbed. I modified them. I changed them up a little bit to make them all fit and kind of, get into the vibe of the scene I wanted, which was obviously like desert Route 66 environment with giant mech warriors and super cool vans. That was what I was going for. My mural board's really funny. If you saw all my inspiration that I started with, and then went out and found the stuff on Marketplace to kind of match the vibe I was going for. Some other assets obviously came from Quixel. There's like all these trees that are cool Quixel assets, lots of rocks. I'm sure everybody knows and has their favorite Quixel rock. Good chance it's in this scene. So I just grab everything and throw it in there. Then obviously we're using the sky system, and that Unreal just does a really lovely job with that atmosphere and the light. It just looks really nice as it kind of comes through this. And then the van was a combination of kit bashing and a lot of modeling that I did myself inside of Maya to kind of pull that van together. And then this robot guy right here, which I'll just kind of scrub through this animation. Obviously, animation's amazing. This is Frederick's fine handiwork. So I have to, give Frederick the mad props because he can do something in like a day that I couldn't do in a lifetime. So thank you, Frederick, for bringing life to my little mech here.
No
It
problem.
kind of makes me laugh and smile. The mech is an interesting story. So this mech starts off as a Fusion 360 model. We have the ability to do nanite skeletal meshes, and I wanted to think, okay, well, I'm coming from a film and DCC background. That was before I was at Epic. I made that journey into real time probably about 8 years ago. But prior to that, I had a full lifetime of doing stuff kind of the traditional way and DCC animation tools and working with film assets that are big and heavy and gnarly. And with skeletal meshes, I was like, okay, well, this is cool. Like I can probably just bring in something that normally I wouldn't want to try to use in a real time situation for a character and have it actually work. So that was the idea of starting with a model that came out of a solids application. So if you look at this guy and you look, come in here and get close and look at these, all of these really nice little bevels and fillets and all the rounds and the way this was built, using kind of a standard solids modeling workflow, it's 6 million polygons and it moves around inside of Unreal like lightning. Like it's just totally ridiculously fast. And that's because of the ability to have that become a nanite skeletal mesh. So if we were to, just visualize the triangles on this guy, you can get a sense as I zoom in here, just how densely tessellated those little rounds and fillets are. So that is something that's really kind of exciting about 5.5. It also works very well with the ability to add displacement and things like that. So if you wanted to have skeletal meshes that then have a displacement layer on top of them, that's supported. Now it's still early days with this. It's still, extremely experimental. A lot of the stuff that I'm showing you is kind of categorized as experimental. Nanite skeletal mesh support is certainly in that category, but it worked pretty well for this demo. And I didn't have to make LODs or anything for this robot to have him perform and work pretty well. And Frederick, you animated this guy. How did it feel when you were working with him?
It was great. I mean, yeah, it's like you said, it's real time to interact with, and I'll show some of that too. But yeah, the nanite skeletal mesh stuff is definitely experimental, and some of the stuff I'm going to show, like deformers, we know don't really play well with those yet. So yeah, hopefully that works out and we don't crash. Things happen,
Yeah, I
We're
think
doing it live.
things
That's what happens sometimes.
things,
Exactly.
things happen. I love that. It's understatement of the year. Things can happen. All right, so let's talk about rendering a bit more. Obviously, we touched on the fact that it's getting faster, it's getting better, more things are supported. One of the areas that had a lot of work put into it was the denoiser. So if we kind of zoom in on that, and that's sort of why I went with a metal diners. I wanted to get these kind of glossier, slightly blurry reflections, and the new denoisers just really, really rock solid. So something like this, where this diner sign is reflecting in the metal prior to 5.5 would have a lot of would have a lot of shimmer, a lot of noise in that, and the denoiser just does a lovely job for that. Now, because of that, and what I've done in this scene is I'm actually running that min value. Here, I can actually show it if we just jump into our post process. Let's just try to get that to kind of come back. Oops. Go away, this guy. I down res my screen to do the stream at the stream resolution, so all my menus are going to be kind of in slightly weird spots, but it's okay.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. It's fine. I got big fonts. I have a hard time seeing now, so having like big. I'm thinking I might actually run like this from now on. Like I'm just going to overdrive my UI to like 200% now that I've experienced what the big bubbly UI feels like. I'm not going back. This is it. All
See,
the
I take it
videos you
back
see from
then.
now on, all the marketing videos are going to be like the UI is going to look
All
like,
blown
yeah,
up.
Daryl's getting old. His eyes don't work anymore. All right. So
Take it back.
anyway,
I'm not sorry. You're welcome instead.
yes, it's an added benefit. You'll notice here that my max roughness I've cranked up, and that again is two reasons I'm doing that. One, I can because the power is there now. It's gotten faster. So this is a performance. It's not only like a quality thing, right? This is the max roughness threshold. So once this threshold exceeded, it stops using lumen ray tracing to calculate. Right. So it basically, if you drop that value down, only the really tight reflections are going to get ray traced, and everything else kicks back off of lumen reflections. But because things have gotten faster, I can pull this up over that value of the default value of 0.4, and you can see just areas like in my scene, like really if you look at here, I'll come over here. If you really look at like some of these street signs and things like that, when those values get a little bit lower, it just doesn't look quite as nice. And when I start to crank that up, to a higher value, you can start to see the terrain even in the background. Like look at this mountain here where it's not tracing those pixels because they're really rough. But when I start to increase that value, it just brings in a little bit more life into the scene there. And my performance is still really good. So that's sort of being facilitated by the algorithmic improvements that have been made and the threading of the improvements that have been made in 5.5, which is super cool. Obviously, I have two bounces on two, which just really helps with all these little reflection surfaces. The other thing that's really interesting about this is as I start to increase that max roughness, obviously, like the diner really starts to ray trace and look correctly. But another area that should really kind of draw your attention to with this improvement to that denoiser is going to be around a puddle, right? So with a puddle, you've got this transitional area between a really rough surface, which is obviously the kind of asphalt, and then the ultra smooth values, which is going to be sort of the pool of the water. But then there's this transitional area, and when we used to have, before we had the upgraded denoiser that came in 5.5, you'd have no noise happening over in this region. It'd be fine because it's not using ray tracing, and you'd have no noise here because super crisp reflections are easy to do without noise. But then that transitional gradient that happened between those would have a little band of like a halo of shimmery noise around it, and it never really looked good. Like to get puddles to look good, it was always like a balancing act that you were trying to play with to get that transitional effect. And now you can see even like through this area right here, it just works really, really well. So yeah, that's the denoiser, which is like I mentioned it in my Unreal Fest demo that I was excited about a denoiser, and that's kind of it makes me laugh. Um, yeah, so let's talk about some of the other things that are going on in the scene with regards to rendering. It's MegaLights. So MegaLights, we in the marketing video that just came out, we dubbed it the Nanotive Lights, which lit up the chat in the video, which I find it made me smile to see that people were getting a good chuckle out of that. But it really is trying to take something that used to be really hard to do in Unreal, which is like light a scene with a whole bunch of lights and make it easy. Just like with Nanite, we were trying to, take something like work with really high resolution geometry and kind of remove that aspect of like, do I really need to think about this quite as much? I can basically just let Unreal handle it for me. And MegaLights gives us that ability. It's super, super powerful. And right now you're looking at this scene and you're probably thinking, all right, well, MegaLights, great. It can do lots of ray trace lights. What's the point? Your scene's lit with the sun. But actually there is a lot of lights in the scene right now. They're all on. You can't really tell that they're on because the intensity value of the sun it's super, super hot, right? Like it's like 50,000 lux, I think, the way I have it set right now. But I actually have in my scene hundreds and hundreds of lights, and they're all on. But you don't really see them except maybe in the diner, right? Like the fact that I'm using these lights in the diner here to kind of illuminate that, and then obviously inside of my where's my gas station? There's whoa, I'm all backwards here. There's a little light that you can see up in here and stuff like that, and then obviously inside there's also lights, but all those other lights aren't really contributing a lot visually currently, but because everything's dynamically lit, if we just drop the sun down and to do that, sometimes it grabs the right light and sometimes it grabs the wrong light. Looks like it grabbed the wrong one. So what we'll do is we'll just close that down. We'll search for sun, directional light. There it is. Cool. So if we take the sunlight and we start to hit G just so we can see what's going on with the sky. If I drop that, okay, there you go. So you can see once we get into a more nighttime environment, all those lights start to kick in and start to glow, and it all looks really pretty. And then obviously, I've got lights go all the way down my road, and I got lights going way down that way. And this is several hundred lights that are on now, all ray traced. So again, super crisp, super clean, no noise. Everything's just doing what I want. And I've got these really nice kind of glowy neon signs that are happening. They're using an emissive material to kind of kick that glow out. And a lot of times with emissive materials, like when you start to get to these low light areas, you start to get more noise. So what I'm doing is I'm giving those emissive materials a little bit of help, right? So if we look at this, you can see next to each one of these guys, I've got a little point light with a little bit of volume on it. If we fly over here to this other sign, you can see these are all little rectangle lights that I'm kind of just using to just kind of kick in there and just give a little bit of fill, a little bit of like just boost into that region so that I don't end up getting, really noisy effects. Same thing happening over here where I'm layering a bunch of lights together. So I've got like another big rectangle light, and then I've got this long tube light for the neon. So that's sort of how I'm lighting the scene. Then obviously inside of here, these diner lights, they all just work. Now, keep in mind, as I'm doing this, it's several hundred lights. And a lot of times what I'm doing, like if we look at this guy right here, I actually build like, because I don't have to worry about the count of lights quite so much now. I can start to do things, the way I would approach them in a more traditional sort of offline rendering approach. And like I build a little light array. So a lot of these lights are actually double stack lights where I'll have like a spotlight, and the spotlight obviously is going to cast that light downward, but it doesn't do a good job of then filling back into the volume of the street light. So I stack with that a little point light, and that little point light gives me that really nice little pop that illuminates up inside of the lighting structure. Gives me that little kind of little kick of bloom and glow on there. And I'm doing that on all these little guys too, right? Like these are all little stacked double light situations on my LED light. So I've got these LED lights kind of kicked around. Like I can light my trees and make little landscape lighting rigs out of all of them, and they all have a little lighting profile on them. So they have an IES profile on the spotlight to kind of give me that more complex lighting pattern on the ground there. And you get the inside fill of that little point light, kind of just tightening up that and giving it this overall localized kind of look. So that's how I lit the scene. And then here, check out my cool van. At night, this just looks so pretty. And again, I'm using a clear coat on this. So this is using a clear coat material. So it's got that kind of rough, broad, diffuse undercoating, and then it has a much sharper highlight in that clear coat. And there's like all these really fun little scratches and stuff all over that I painted. This model, both the robot and the van, after they came out of Maya, went into Substance Painter. They're painted with massive textures, a lot of 8K textures on these guys to capture all that detail. And they're using UDEMs. So UDEMs are great. Unreal does a really good job for UDEMs. So again, coming from that traditional kind of DCC background, that film and TV background, UDEMs were a big part of my life. So I'm still using those, obviously in Unreal. Now, here's the thing that's kind of cool that I want to draw your attention to. And another thing that's been added, it's sort of under the radar. If you look at the intensity of the lights in the diner at night, it's still got a nice volume. They could even be a little bit brighter probably at night. But notice what happens when I go back to a daytime model here. Oops, let's hit G just so I can see what's going on with that guy. Here, let's get like some warm, it's sort of a dusk look here. The lights in the diner, notice how they're staying consistent, right? They're always sort of just there at the right level. And the way that's happening is there's actually a new attribute on the lights, which gives you the ability to compensate for the exposure. So if we go into the sky, let's just pick you, and if we grab this guy, let's go to details. Let's just bring up this blueprint really fast on this. And I think if I search for, hold on. Oh, that's not going to work. Wait a second. Grab the wrong thing. I want a light. Give me a light. Oh, do you guys like the inside of the diner? Check it out. We could hang out here. We could have some sodas.
Definitely.
I guess people aren't going to talk back to me, are they? I'm on
I
a
will.
I'm there with you. I'm there with you, Daryl. I want a burger and a milkshake.
Yeah, I'm immersed.
Let's see if it shows up in the blueprint. Yeah. All right. So here, this is a great tip. Add to favorites. Do you guys know about favorites? Make sure you add your favorite things to favorites, because now I don't have to search for that. I have my little star turned on right here. So woohoo, there is the new inverse exposure blend. So that's that lets those lights basically sort of maintain their level of intensity as I move. Ooh, those clouds are pretty colors. As I move through the intensity of the sunlight and it starts to drop down, that inverse exposure blend is what's running that. And those are also on over here on this other little gas station thing. Yeah, so that's how I lit the scene using MegaLights. And there are some system settings that you need to turn on. And also in the post-process volume, there's controls for it. So there's a few areas where if for some reason things aren't behaving the way you're expecting, or like you don't feel like you're getting the performance improvement that you might be expecting, there's a good chance that you haven't thrown one of the switches on in the right place to get them fired up and working. But it's pretty straightforward and easily findable, I guess, is the easy to find them. So another thing that's worth talking about, because I just did it. Hold on, let me get back to that sun. Ooh, light. Wait. thought it was called sun. Yeah, it is called sun. Cool. Here, let's drop that sun below, and notice what happens when I get the sun low again. Um, where's my sun? Which direction is that guy going? Oh, there it
An
is.
alarming
Okay.
sentence out of context, but
What's going on with my sun? Okay, so this is interesting. So you'll see that as I make it night or even semi-night, like dusky, I have like stars in the sky and I have this moon, and this is using a new setup we have in Unreal that ships with 5.5. It's a it's not gonna remember what it's called. It's called day system or something. Day sequencer. So really what it is it's a fancy material. It comes with a sequencer timeline that you can animate and do stuff with. But the day sequencer essentially gives you the ability to add in a moon, add in the stars, make the stars move. The moon and the sun both have shader materials associated with them so that you can make the sunspot bigger, make the sunspot brighter. You can make the moon textured with whatever texture you want. It works with the direction of the skylight or the sunlight. So when you're using sky atmosphere, you have index 0, which is your sun, you have index 1, which is the moonlight. So it all kind of grabs those 0 and 1 labeled, is as a skylight for your directional lights, and automatically creates like a crescent moon or something like that. So it's really very, very easy to work with. And then you basically shove it onto a sky sphere. So on that sky sphere, then you have this material, and then the material has these attributes that allow you to, kind of modify it, change it, get it to do exactly what you want. So that's new in 5.5 also that I was using in the scene. So yeah, super, super fun. Love that. I think that's pretty much. Oh, the clouds. This is also something that's new in 5.5. So since we're talking about some stuff, um, it still works on the same idea, right? It's still our volumetric cloud model, but we have a new master material that is a bit easier to work with and tune and create your clouds. So I've got the old clouds just sitting in here, so we can bring up a material instance of that, just so you can get a sense of like, what they used to do, and like the old clouds. Here, turn this on, and see what they look like. Old clouds. Oh boy. So remember I told you my fans are gonna kick on? They just fired up.
oh, oh
I'm
no.
I'm 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 making shaders. Fun. Hopefully they work. Let's see. Ah, they're not even in here. Did all that for nothing. Let's go back to the 5.5 clouds. Anyway, the important thing is the previous master material for clouds had, this is the controls you had, which not very pedestrian, not necessarily the easiest to understand. Like, I just want my clouds to get bigger. I just want them to be like storm clouds or something like that. And there's really nothing here that as an artist I can grab and think, I move this slider, I'm going to get this effect. But if you look at the 5.5 version of a material instance based off of the new master that ships with the engine, it's a little easier, right? Like, you have different cloud types. With those different cloud types, you have sliders that allow you to balance in your scene, like, how much of those clouds are in there. So as I start to increase or decrease these, you can see I'm turning on just that type of cloud layer. Maybe I want less of these and more, or more of those. And then it's also got some other really great control over, like just the coverage, the density. They all just work much easier. And there's actually storm clouds. You can have lightning in it. So it's just so much easier to get good looking clouds out of the box. Now, keep in mind, this master material, I'm pretty sure this is the case, at least that's the way it was in the previews, has been replaced in the engine folder. So what that means is, if you didn't make a local copy in your project and you're referencing back to the master in the engine, directory, it's going to grab that new master on scenes that you open up. So just keep in mind that, that new master might be pumping into your legacy scenes. And if you don't want it to do that, then you probably want to, like, before you roll into 5.5 and 5.4, make sure you go into the engine content, make a local copy of that cloud master into your local project, and then have your material instance reference into that local cloud, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I don't know. It might make sense. Let's see if I did
Makes
it. I
sense
don't
to
even know
me.
if I did. Here, we'll see. We'll see if I'm maybe if I show it, and if I honestly don't remember what I did. I built this scene a few months ago, but let's see if I'm pretty sure if I click on my parent, you know, I believe then if we look at this guy, yeah. So I did exactly what I said. I brought the master out of the engine content folder and put it directly in my local project. So just do that if you don't want your clouds to change. If you're opening a 5.4 project in the 5.5, I guess is the tip of the day for clouds. My clouds are a little too crazy. Here, we can just go back. I want less clouds in my scene. I don't like that many clouds. Did you work with Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, Frederick? Did you work on that?
I did not. I had many friends that worked on it, but I did not.
Okay. So that was a fun show. Yeah, so that's it for rendering, unless I missed something. Can Frederick, did I miss anything?
Nope, but I think you were going to show control rigs, and I see people asking about them.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good transition. Yeah, so anyway, Frederick did this. He animated it with control rig. And if we go into my collection, so this is kind of like favorites. I definitely use favorites in here in the content browser as well as collections. This is the control rig for this character. It's interesting because it's now, I think it's moved to production ready, right? Control rig?
Control rig? You mean modular control rigs?
Yeah, modular control rig. I
They're
believe
beta now. I believe they're beta in
beta.
product.
It's moved a level up.
It has.
And this is the rig. I set this up earlier and then sent it to Frederick. He did all that cool animation. It's worth noting that you'll notice in the left-hand side here, there's many more modules. So Chase has been working on getting more modules with the team. So there's a lot of things like this kind of, rear hind leg module. There's some specific car modules, tail modules. Lots of new modules have been added. Now, keep in mind that these modules, you can make your own modules. You always could. If you just double click on a module, it will bring up the standard control rig where you can set up your forward solve, your backward solve. So all those modules are actually built by us, but there's no reason why you couldn't be building your own modules and adding them into control rig. So just keep that in mind. And yeah, they work really well. And then obviously you hand something like this off to somebody like Frederick, and they can bring life to these inanimate objects, these robots.
So someone just asked about the car. Did you rig the car with the module rigs as well?
Not in this
Not
demo,
in this
but
demo.
Chase, I believe, did do
Yeah.
something, but I think he did something with oops, my bad. I just went minus this. I was trying to close down my control rig. Yeah, no, the car is this car. I have two versions of the car of the van in here. One of them is set up on a skeleton rig, but that's something I'm going to talk about a little bit later when we get into dynamics. Um, but Chase definitely had a demo. If you look on Unreal Fest and try to find like the control rig demo from the Unreal Fest Seattle, I think he was using that snow truck that I built from the 5.4 demo. So that 5.4 demo, I do show some control rig stuff, but not in this one on vehicles.
Yeah, we're just chiming in about the modules. So yeah, it's definitely they were just they're example modules. So there's arms, there's spines, there's tails, there's things, but those should really be a starting point. And I expect, if you guys are making your own film, you're going to want your rigs a certain way and configured a certain way. So that's where what Daryl's mentioning, you can use those as a starting point, but then build out your own versions of those modules. So now when you build a rig, it'll be your set of modules. And I think you built these rigs pretty quick, right? Using the modules?
Oh yeah, very, very nothing sophisticated. There's some pistons. Like there's I'm using the piston for here. I've got a couple little pistons sort of over in this area, but no, really, super straightforward to set up. This was easy. It was really, really easy to do. Especially now that we have that hind leg, you kind of get that, the setup for the reverse knee is much easier. It's not really a reverse knee, but for the like the short limb with the big ankle is much easier to get set up now for a hind leg. And yeah, it just it's cool. It's very, very cool stuff to see these, the tools that we all grew up with kind of maturing into a real-time solution is just, it's great. It's really, really great stuff. Super happy to see what you guys are working on. So thank you
Mhm.
for that.
Of course. All
Yeah, so I think
right.
that's it. Frederick's gonna do animation stuff, and then we'll be back with like a little bit of run through about some chooser things and mutable and dynamics, and then we'll take some questions at the end, I guess.
Sure. All righty. So I don't know if my screen is up yet. Probably not.
Not yet. Let's see.
Switch it over. So I'm going to continue in this diner scene and just show how I actually animated this guy for Daryl.
I think we might need you to share your screen again.
Oh, did it turn
Looks
on?
like. I think so.
Oops, my bad.
All good.
Let's see if that works.
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we are.
Oh, you still have the old logo in there, Frederick. We gotta switch that. It says Fest 2024. You gotta
That's right. Is it still,
just takes a second to change it because it's procedurally made with our super cool motion graphics stuff. So
am I shared now, Tina? Is it good?
You
Yes,
are.
you are now.
Okay,
You're good.
cool. All right, so yeah, so this was an older version of the project that Daryl had sent me before he did all the rest of his magic. So it'll look a little bit different. I think the gas station is missing, and there's a few other things that are different. So, but it's still the same world. And the cool thing is, I just loaded this project, and he already built the rig. So I just hopped in here, and I actually animated it like this. So this is not just a baked animation sequence. This should be the live control rig. So you can see even when I manipulate it, even though it's 6 million polygons, it is still completely real time. And it's not only completely real time as you're posing, but it's also real time during playback. So yeah, the animation sequence that Daryl was showing was a baked clip of it where I had baked this data down to an animation sequence. So that just means it's like all the bones just animating in space. But for this is the source file. So this is actually what I had keyframed and animated. So you can see it's not just it's not just keys on every frame. It's actually like just like you would expect. You pick a control and you see the curves on those controls, right? So is the stream down? No.
no, you're good. I see
You're
it.
good.
Okay. So yeah, so I did a talk at Unreal Fest showcasing a lot of this stuff. So I don't want to kind of do that stuff again. So I'm going to show a bit different from what is in that talk. There's a few other really cool talks related to all this stuff. So Greg Richardson gave one on cinematics and sequencer, and Chase Cooper gave one on modular rigs, like Daryl mentioned, and also an animator from our Lego Fortnite project, because that project is fully rigged and fully animated all in the engine. John Fielding did a talk on like advanced animation techniques. So I don't think all those talks are up yet, but they should be up really shortly. I think within the next few days, because we've just done the edit. Okay, so now they should be going out to the world pretty soon. So keep an eye out on those because there's a lot of great information in there. In my talk, I cover like levels and level sequences and just basic setup of how do you set up a shot. How I'm an animator new coming from Maya, and I just want to add a character and start animating. So the first half of it is that, and the second half is a lot of stuff I'll show here, just kind of in different. I'm gonna show different kind of content here. So I wanted to show a couple of animation things here that you can do. So right now, I had animated this head just with like rotations. So that means when I rotate the body, the head moves with it. But a lot of situations, you don't really want that. So I could do things like I can just put the head in like a orientation constraint to something else. And the cool thing about Unreal is if I do that, it basically just moves these keyframes into another space. So either I could constrain it to something, I could, what I'll do instead is I'll turn it into like an aim constraint. So say I want to keep this animation as it is, but I want to have like a sphere or something that this head will aim at. So again, I'm going to keep this animation intact. I'm going to just create a sphere. Keep in mind, this is a live demo, so hopefully it all goes well. I'm going to try.
I believe.
So I'm going to put this kind of where he's looking. So his head is kind of just looking forward. So I'm just going to kind of aim it somewhere. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just going to kind of have the head aim to that. So now the first thing I want to do here is I want that sphere to follow the head, not only in like position, but also in orientation, because I'm going to show how I can just convert it to an aim really quickly. So I had grabbed this head. Actually, I'm going to grab the sphere. I'm going to use something called a snapper tool. I don't know if you guys are aware of this one. It's basically like a live baked constraint I mean, it's like you pick something, you pick a child. So in this case, I'm going to pick the sphere, and then I'm going to select this head control, and I'm going to pick that as the parent. Now I choose my frames here, so I'm just going to do these frames that are in this. But I think the animation continues well beyond this, so I'll just no, that's it. It's a short animation. I've done a bunch of animations, so this is just one of them. So this thing just waking up like this. I want to take this animation and convert it to a name. So I go to the snapper tool. I select the sphere as a child. I select the turret control as the parent. I check my frames. If I want to change the frames, I can just go to a different frame and hit this background, and you'll see it actually updates the number. So it's a quick way for you to set your kind of in and out points of what you want to snap. In this case, I'm going to keep the offset because I want to keep the sphere out here. I also want to snap the rotation just because I just want to make sure it's kind of like if I had constrained it and baked out the constraint. That's ultimately what I'm going to do here. Instead of keys only here, I'm going to do all frames. And then I'm going to snap the animation. And this very quickly now should, if all goes well, give me now a baked result. So you'll see now that it baked, it now will follow the head as if I had constrained it. But this head is not, I mean, this sphere is not hooked up to anything. I literally just baked the transform of as if it was connected to the head. And the reason I did that is now I can just say, okay, well, now I want this head to aim at that sphere. So I grab the head control, and now I'm not going to use the snapper for this. I'm going to actually create a constraint. And I'm just going to click here and say, look at this sphere. So if it would let me pick it, why are you not letting me pick it? Hold on. Second. Sphere is there. Okay. Right again. Let me just make sure I don't have other constraints in here. Okay, I don't. Look at sphere. No, not working. Why are you not working? Oh, there it worked. I think there was something in there, maybe like a transparent thing or something. Okay, so now you see the animation is still the same, but the cool thing now is now it's controlled by the position of this sphere. So because that sphere was moving through space, you know, and how I had rotated it, I literally just baked the results from it, and then I just constrained the head aiming to the sphere. So the reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to show that I can go in here now and edit the keyframes on this sphere if I wanted to. So if I look here, this is like the up and down of the sphere. So if I move these keyframes, you'll see it would move all those keyframes up in space, which would move the aim, right? So it's kind of, I've converted the motion to a look at. So I could clean this up like this if I want to, but I could also use our new animation layers, which I want to show. So we have proper animation layers now in 5.5. So if you remember, for any of you who've animated in the engine already, we had this thing called sections. So if I click on this transform track and click this plus sign, there's sections here, right? Additive sections, absolute sections. Overrides are new in 5.5, and we added them because of these workflows with the animation layers. So instead of creating a section in the sequencer, I'm going to use our layer system. So I click here, this layers icon, which brings up a new little window, which is an animation layers window, which should seem very familiar for any of you animators out there who have used things like animation layers before.
Woo!
Hey, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sphere, and instead of creating a section, I'm going to create an animation layer. So all I do is I select something and I click this plus layer sign, and it will add the selected object to a new layer. I can say head aim or something. By default, it's additive, but I could also change this to override if I want. I can add and remove objects. I can select the objects inside the layer. So if I didn't have the sphere selected and I right click and I say select objects, it will select that sphere. I could also just click this little dot here, and that would also select it. So there's a bunch of ways you can do that. If I open this window up a little bit more, you'll see that I can mute these layers. So once I've set some animation there, I can mute it, I can lock it, and I can also animate the weight. So it's kind of basic functionality of just animation layers, but we kind of extracted out the most important bits and put them in for, this is our first version of anim layer. So now say I want to do an animation layer because I want to edit the trajectory. Maybe instead of going a smooth arc up here, I want to just adjust it and create like a little bounce to it or something. Yes, I could have gone into the keyframes and manipulated all those, but here I'm kind of doing it in a non-destructive way. So I have this sphere now in a new layer. And what you'll see here is if I look at this sphere, you'll see it did add a new section for me. But if I click on these layers in the layer manager, you'll see it's switching the active section. So before you would have had to like right click here and say key this section somewhere. I don't even remember because I've been using the new system. You would have to do key this section. So a lot of things hidden in right click menus, which I will get to as well when I talk about some of the changes in sequencer. But I just want to continue on this train of animation layers. So you see this green border that goes around that layer. That means when I set keyframes now on this object, those keyframes will go into this layer. Right? So this is just which layer I'm in and what am I keyframing. So now I can just say, all right, I'm going to create that bounce. So I just set a keyframe on this sphere. If I had it selected, it would help. And then I can now, if I move this, you'll see it's doing additive motion on top of, so you see all the keys beyond that are getting adjusted because I'm additively just keyframing this sphere. So I can, here, if I do another one over here, and then I move this down a little bit, you'll see just that section of keys between this keyframe and the next keyframe. All those keys are being adjusted, right? So again, it's like and the nice thing is this is non-destructive, right? I can just mute this. If I don't like that, I'll just mute it and it goes back to the old results. I can also weight it down. So say this big arc change I made here, I only want like a percentage of it. You can see I can actually weight it down to just half of the results of what I just changed. So that's just one use of animation layers. Another use is I could do, well, that's what I wanted to show too. So if I open up this layer in here, you'll see that it only has the head in it, or sorry, the sphere is the only object in it. So that's why there's a section under the sphere object. If I took like the body control and I added it to this layer, I can just say add selected. What you'll see what happens is under the character now, there's a new section called head aim. So there's a head aim down here because that's where the sphere keyframes live, and there's a head aim up here where the keyframes of the body live. So what that means is now same thing as I change the active layer, you'll see that the active section changes on both those objects because this layer now has the sphere in it and also one of the controls of the character. And the cool thing is, if for you that have animated here before, when you added a section before, you get all the controls of the rig. The nice thing with our new layer system is you will get only the control that you've added. So if I add another control to this layer, add selected, you'll see it will now appear here. I don't recommend mixing workflows where you're using these layers and then mixing like active section here and deleting things and removing things. It's kind of more one directional, meaning this layer system sits on top of those section workflows in sequencer. So if you're creating layers in our layer manager, don't go and edit and modify the contents of it or delete them. Because if you do that, you're going to get out of sync with your sequencer and layer manager. So yeah, just word of caution. If you're using animation layers, stick to using the animation layer system for choosing which one is active, for adding, removing objects. So here I can say, you know what, I don't want this foot in here anymore, so I'm just going to remove it. And you'll see it gets removed from that layer. Same here, if I don't want this body, I mean, I can just show if I start keyframing this body now, I'm just adding motion now, right? And even because that aim is still active, you see if I move the body, he's still always aiming at that sphere. This is why it's kind of advantageous sometimes to move something to an aim. You want something to like laser focus and look at something, and then you're going to be animating the body and doing sorts of things. Sometimes it's nice to just have like a look at point that you're just kind of focused on. So I covered a bit of constraints there. I covered some of the new animation layers thing. Oh, the other thing you can do here too. So if I had one more layer, I'm just going to say, let's do another layer with the body. I'll call that body. So now that body lives in both of these layers. And if I had done on this third layer now, well, body is a weird name because control is body. So I'm going to say noise or something. Now you see, as I update there, it updates this section in the sequencer as well. So that's what I mean. It's a one directional push down into the sequencer. So stick to the sequence, stick to the anim layer system as much as you can. I mean, it won't harm anything if you do. It's just you could get in a situation where you're out of sync. That's mostly what I want to cover. So here I have the body now in this noise track. So now if I just say I'm going to animate a little bit of like just back and forth shaking, and I'm going to actually use I can scrub in the viewport. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. I probably covered it in some of my other talks, but maybe it's been a while. So we have we added in 5.2, I think we added a bunch of new hotkeys for transport. So stepping keys, stepping frames, playing, stopping, scrubbing time. This one. So these are the hotkeys that I use. I like to have them close to my left hand because I use a mouse and a keyboard. So I like where my WASD and my WER, those hotkeys are. I like to have all my transport tools near them. So I have scrub time is B. I have step backwards, so that's frame stepping is X. I have step forward, which is C. I have key stepping backwards, which is Z, and key stepping forward is V. So if you think about where your hand is, you just drop your hand one level on your keyboard and you're transporting time. So that's why I can fly through and just like step through frames. I can step through keys, right? So kind of really quick to have it. Otherwise, you would have to move your hand to like the other side of the keyboard because I think the defaults are like the greater than, less than, and yeah, there's a bunch of just hotkeys that are kind of far away from your hand. So for you to be comfortable as an animator, I definitely recommend moving these things around, experimenting with those. So sorry, those
That's a pro
hotkeys,
tip.
yeah. So those hotkeys I showed, just do a search for viewport. And those are great because they work kind of globally. They work in the viewport. So 5.1, I think we didn't even have that ability to be able to step in your viewport. So related to that, in 5.5, we also added a new C-bar. Gotta love your C-bars in UE. There's always many hidden secret ones. I did cover this one in my talk, but I just wanted to show it and what it does. And we call this one focus anim mode pending focus mode. Set that to true or 1. Right now it's off. So I'm not gonna change it yet and just show you why it's important. If you're working your sequencer and you just move your mouse over the viewport and you try to hit a hotkey like game mode, well, it doesn't do anything because the window does not have focus. So you would have to wiggle your mouse to give focus to then hit G. So this really gets in the way of that flow of I'm animating, I just go over here and I hit a hotkey. Why is it not doing anything? Oh, I need to wiggle the mouse to give focus to then hit a hotkey. That is kind of annoying. So this, let me find it. Sorry, all my C bars are showing up. Focus again. Anim mode, pending focus mode 1. So if I do that, now I'm working in sequencer. Now I just move my mouse up here and I hit G. Now it's actually pushing focus into the viewport because I hit a hotkey while my mouse was hovering over that viewport. This one was really popular when I showed this at Unreal Fest, so I just wanted to call it out again. Benoit, one of our developers who also did the new gizmos and manipulators, he was able to get this up and running pretty quickly in animation mode. So keep that in mind. If you're in any other mode, it's not going to do it. So right now it lives in animation mode. We are looking with the editor team on how we can generalize this to just a fix. I prefer this. This is how a lot of other tools work. You shouldn't have to push focus, or you shouldn't have to give focus to Windows to then do something. I think it should just push it through. So we tried it as an experiment, and you're going to probably want to turn that on for any of you, at least who are animating in animation mode. So that's a cool one. Where was I going? Okay, so control rig. So yeah, you can see like Daryl was saying, this rig is fast. It is many, many polygons, and it is. Oh, so even though this thing is aim constrained, I can still rotate it like side to side. I can't rotate in other axes because it's kind of locked to this sphere, the aiming of it, right? I could bake this constraint. So if I click here, I can see this is the constraint here. So if I know that I want this, I don't want this thing like I've done what I wanted with the aim and I just want to kind of bake it out. I can just bake it. I can either do that here. I can just click bake. So if I bake this out now, I could do keys only. I'm just going to do all frames, hit OK. This now will bake the results. So now this sphere is no longer driving the aim, but the results of what it was doing are still in there. So now I can get rid of this sphere if I want. I don't need it anymore because it's not doing anything. It's not hooked up to anything. So now it is no longer aimed. And now you'll see when I rotate the body, it now rotates with the head again because I basically just deleted that constraint. I got rid of it. Well, I didn't delete it. I just baked it. So it just put the results into the head control. So now the head keyframes have that change with the noise and with everything else I had done using that aim. But it's really quick, being able to hop things, add constraints, add, base switching, constraints, snapper tools, they're all like super powerful for an animator's kind of arsenal. You're going to want to do this stuff all over the place. And yeah, the fact that it auto compensates all your keys for you, it does a lot of kind of free stuff for you. Okay. moving turret to an aim. I'm looking at my list. Animation layers covered. Sequencer. Okay, I want to cover some of the new stuff in sequencer. So I'm just going to delete that constraint. I don't need it anymore. Let's take a look at some of the new stuff. So this is a curve editor. You might notice that it looks a little bit differently. That's because I have collapsed down. If I could grab it. Where are you? Little window. I collapsed it down because I don't need this tree view. I don't really use this much. I mean, you have a tree view in your sequencer, you have a tree view in your curve editor. But the nice thing is with our new anim details channel box that we added in 5.4, it is synchronized with your curve editor. So what that means is I can just collapse this tree view because I'm not gonna find controls in that list. I prefer a bigger curve editor. So if I select a control here, you'll see these are the keyframes just of my head control, the turret control. And if I click channels in here, it actually isolates those channels in the curve editor for you. So if I multi-select channels here, I can see the X, Y, and Z. Yeah, so just keep that in mind. That's why I have that tree view hidden. I'm going to go back to sequencer because that's what I'm going to cover here now. So I'm just going to collapse some stuff down. We have done a bunch of work to the sequencer. So related to that right-click thing that I was showing where I needed to get to like another section of the sphere here, this section, we added this sequencer details shelf, which is new, which is basically all that information from the right-click menus. So I can just pin it, and that pins it like an overlay, or I can push this dock tab, which actually slides it out and pushes your sequencer over. So however you want to work, you can leave this little details thing. So if I click on things here, you'll see all those things that were deeply nested in the right-click menu are now exposed for you to get to, right? So yeah, it's just much easier access to get to things that were otherwise in that right-click menu. So anything you click, animation tracks, materials, lights, anything that would have been nested in this menu, properties, this is the kind of stuff that shows up in there. So just a quality of life thing, easier access to things. If you don't want this thing here, like you don't want to take up those precious pixels, you can turn this off. It is probably here somewhere. If I remember where it was, somewhere there is a place. I usually leave it on so I don't turn it off. If Greg were here, he would tell me it's right there. You just passed it. Anyway, it's here. There is a way to turn it off. It's probably the eyeball. I'm telling you, it's gotta be. Layer bars, sidebar details. There it is, way up top. Okay, so that just shuts it off completely. If you don't need it, you don't want to use it, you just want those pixels back, you can turn it off. There's a bunch of other stuff you can turn off in here as well, including these columns in the sequencer. This was, I think, in 5.4 that we added this, but these columns are also configurable. So if I want pin, lock, and solo and mute all here, if I don't, again, if I want precious pixels, I'm only going to use mute and pin maybe. Indicator is a new column over here, which I'll get to in a little bit. So you can configure this. Same with this. If you don't want this key navigation, which goes steps key to key, I use hotkeys for that, so I don't use it. But I do like the key frame. I like being able to set keys here sometimes. So I have that one on. Color picker is just this little bar here where it lets you kind of choose colors of these, right? So if you want these rows to be a certain color, you can kind of adjust that depending on what you're doing. Okay, sidebar details, some of the display options. Filters, so we completely, actually, I'm going to check my notes because I know I'll miss something. Yeah. Okay, filters. So we rewrote this filter system more in line with what you may have been used to for the content browser or the outliner, where you can click up here and you can add filters. So in this case, I'm just going to say, I want the skeletal mesh actors only, right? So that filter now becomes a button here, which basically, if it's not on, it's everything. If I click this, it only shows me skeletal mesh actors. We wanted to take that concept and bring it into the sequencer. So we moved the filters that used to be in the sequencer to this. So I use selected control rig control, and I'll get to that in a second. And I use selected, which is selected asset. So you'll see here, if I have none of these, and you'll see now these things were added here. So now if I just want to toggle selected control rig control, which is showing nothing here because I don't have a control selected. So if I select the control, now it shows me only that control. You see, this is a turret. this is that. So what that means now is if you've collapsed this down and you're looking at your data like yeah, like I guess because I have layers here. So um, these are the keyframes only on the object you've selected. If I multi-select, you'll see both of them show up there. So yeah, so if this thing had been collapsed here, this is a combination of keyframes on both of these selected objects. This is much more like a Maya or like other timelines. They usually work on what you have selected. So you can get into that mode. So that's why I like this mode sometimes, where I only want to see the keyframes on what I'm working on. So I'll do that, and then I see now these are the keyframes only on the turret. The other one is selected asset. So if I pick, so the only thing in my sequencer right now is the character. If I want to like animate the whole diner, like the top of the diner, I can just select it and then hit S. And S basically just set a keyframe on the diner. So you see here now the building has a transform track and it has a keyframe on it. So now I can just animate the building if I want. Oh, I don't have, hold on. So now I've animated the diner moving up and down. Daryl, I bet you didn't expect to see your diner moving up and down in animation. So yeah, so and the reason I do that is just to show what this selected thing does. So what selected does is if I select this character, you'll see only the character shows up here. If I select the diner, only the diner shows up here. So it's kind of a way to clean up your sequencer. This is also something that lives in the outliner, but you might not know about it because it's kind of hidden. They don't have a selected filter here. We definitely want one, kind of like what we added here. But in the meantime, you can do this and you can say only selected. So now your outliner, if I pin it here, now you'll see only what you select in the viewport would show up in your outliner. So it's just kind of a quick way to clean up the clutter of what you're looking at. And if you just know you want to box select a few things and only see those things. So if I multi-select a few things, like the ground and the tree, you'll see those three things that I have selected are what's showing up in there. So anyway, we were mimicking that behavior in the sequencer because the sequencer can definitely get a bit overwhelming at times when you have lots of characters, cameras, props, you name it, bunch of controls in the characters. You can get into a really long list of a lot of stuff. So that's what selected control rig controls filter and selected filter do. Those are the main ones I use. We also have one which is cool, which is selected anim layer. So what this does is it only shows you the layers that you're working on. So it hides the rest of the clutter. So now it's reduced it down. So these are probably my three most used ones is selected control rig controls. So you can actually use those together where you can use a diner, it'll show up there. If I click the character, it'll be the whole character. If I use a control, it'll be just the control of that character. So it just kind of cleans up your setup. And we have other ones here too. Like I just want to see camera cuts. I just want to see audio. I just want to see skeletal meshes. You can even make your own custom filters. So there's a whole cheat sheet help thing. You can do all sorts of cool filters customized by like selected keyframes even, or time, filter by time range. You can give it a time range and filter out only information that has keyframes within that time. So you can do a bunch of cool stuff there. So definitely play with those. What else? Oh, we have a history now of the search bar, which is cool. So if I type like transform or something, no. RX, no. What can I type? Building something. Okay, so whatever you type now, there's a history here of what you've searched that actually brought results. So that's new as well. And then these three buttons I'm going to go into as well. Oh, you also notice some things were moved around. So if you were used to things like living over here, some things have moved to this view options for the sequencer. So that includes this auto expand nodes on selection, which by default is turned on. And I was always annoyed by it because it means that if you've collapsed your rig down and you're working on this character and you select the control, let me turn it back on. Okay. So here, so if I had this rig in here and I click a control, you'll see it opens. Oh, it didn't open it. I didn't open it. Yeah, so it opens that list of things. Oh, because I'm on the different layer. Sorry. It opens and expands that thing automatically on selection. So I turn that off because if I know I'm going to collapse something, I want it to stay collapsed, even though I'm clicking on things and working on things. So that's just kind of where that one lives now. filter pinned, auto expand, filtered icons. So there's a bunch of new usability here. Also, that filter bar here, you can have it vertical, which goes to the side here, or you can have it horizontal. I prefer it takes up less room. And you can turn that bar off completely if you don't want to see it. You might still want to use filters just from this menu here. So you can still, if you don't want these buttons, we've added that flexibility. So definitely a lot of UX work around the sequencer. This last one here, I mean, there's definitely a lot more stuff we've done, but I just want to show what these do as well. We also have added isolating, hiding, and showing everything. And these are what we call display actions. So if I'm working on something and I just want to compare maybe the sphere location to the location of this layer of the sphere to this layer of the building, this can be really difficult when you have a bunch of things, in your sequencer to compare things because we had no way of hiding other things. So what you can do now is you can use these display actions, and I can hit this button here, which is also Alt Q by default. If I click that, you'll see it hid everything else except for the location. And this even works down to the track level. So if I do that again, it's kind of this additive system of hiding and showing things. I can even go here and hit the hide button, and now that one will go away and it will only show that. And now I'm kind of left with just the TX of the sphere. If I hit this button, I can bring everything back really quickly and pick a few other things that I want to work on, hit my hotkey, and now I've cleaned up what I'm looking at. Okay. So yeah, this one is awesome. I use it all the time to compare things. I'm like, okay, I just want to see this, and I hit a hotkey, and then that's all that's there. Now I just want to compare these two. And the cool thing is this also would filter out results in your curve editor. So just keep that in mind. If you've filtered something and you go to your curve editor and you're selecting things and you're not seeing anything, probably because you've filtered them out. We don't really have an indicator that you're using filters here. We definitely want to connect these workflows more. So you have these kind of indicators in the curve editor that if you filtered something over there, you would know that that it's not there. So anyway, we know we want to make some improvements to that, but just keep that in mind. You might have isolated something if things are not. I'm going to bring everything back. So that is that. Let me just check my notes, layers. I covered that. Okay, so I'm gonna show some more stuff now. Where are my notes? Animator kit. Okay, so we added a plugin in 5.5 that we call the Animator kit. So this is a plugin that you'll need to enable and probably restart your editor because that's usually what happens with plugins. So you enable this plugin, you quit and restart. You won't see any changes to anything in your interface, but you will have access now to some new helper utility rigs that we call them. So Chase Cooper built a couple of utility rigs for us that we put into this plugin, and Jack Kai wrote some deformer plugins, which I'm going to get to here in a minute. So I'm gonna just just kind of show, I'm gonna get rid of this building from the sequencer because I don't want to animate anymore. And I'm gonna get rid of this sphere. I'm gonna get rid of one of the layers, delete this layer. Oh, that's what I was gonna show is you can now merge layers of just selected. So before, if you used sections in the sequencer, you had to collapse everything. It was this collapse all sections, basically just collapse everything into one big transform. Now, if you had multiple layers, you can just select the ones you want to merge together, and they would merge just them. So that was also new. I'm going to delete this layer as well. Don't need it. So now I'm back to just a single layer. Oh, we also moved the weight track from way at the bottom to way at the top because otherwise you would have to scroll all the way down to the bottom to get to the weight track. So it's just in a kind of better location up here. And that's that weight that I was animating before, which is driven by this. So as I adjust the weight there, it adjusts the weight there. So again, they're interconnected one directional. Okay, the animator kit. So the reason I just hid everything is I just wanted to kind of clean up my sequencer a bit more. I could have isolated things out, but in this case, I just wanted to clean it out. So the utility rigs that we added are over here. So I could just click the plus sign here. No, sorry. Where is my add? Well, I would do it here. So I could add the control rig here. This is also a new filter system that we added in here. This means you can tag your rigs. you can call them, human rigs and animal rigs, and then you would get new filters here that you can turn on and off. So we tested it with this system where we added tags to the deformers and we added tags to the utility rigs. So now when I click on these filters here, it filters out all the other control rigs from that list and only shows me the deformers. The utility rigs, you just have to turn off this filter asset by skeleton because they're not really compatible with everything, but they're just like these helper rigs. So you can see here when I turn deformer on, I see the deformers. When I do utility, I see the utility. So this is what we added in that plugin, is these two utility rigs. So a 3-node rig and a blend parent. So I'm just going to add one. So this is how I got to it again. I click the plus sign of my character. I go to control rig. I have this filter turned on and I say, let's just do the 3-node one first. So it added a new rig to this character. So I'm just going to move it out of the way so you can see what it is. This one is super simple. It's literally just 3 nodes. It is a global, a parent, and a child. And it just lets you do like temporary pivot kind of stuff because you can constrain controls to these things. You can just use them as kind of helper objects. They're really just 3 nodes that are parented to each other. So again, it's just a little helper node. The other one we added, so I'm going to delete that one, don't need it, is the blend parent. So again, we made this in a control rig because we know that this is functionality you sometimes need. So this one is also just a simple light little rig that you can just use. If I zoom into this one, it just has 3 nodes on it. If I move this guy, you'll see that node in the middle is a percentage of both. So it's parented to both this and this. So again, if you want to move something in a percentage, because we don't have multi-parenting with animatable weights yet for the constraints, it is something we are going to look to in the future. It's just having, being able to constrain something to multiple objects and blend between them. Because we don't have that, we figured we could just do it with a control rig. So you can constrain things to this if you wanted to, right? So if I take this pole vector here and I constrain it, well, they don't have selection problems again. Constrain it to this guy. So now you'll see that pole vector, did it do it? Yeah, so that pole vector is now moving 100% with this guy, but it's also moving a percentage, right? So the cool thing is I can animate the blend of this. I can say 100% that parent or 100% that parent, or in this case, I'm just gonna do like 10%, like maybe like something like this. So it will move, it'll move more with this guy than it does with this guy. So again, it's just like a rigging tool that animators can now use and add to their scene and constrain things to it and use them kind of for, utility rigs. So I'm going to delete this guy because I want to show the other utility rigs, which are the deformers. I know I've been doing crazy stuff to this guy, so he's starting to look a little wonky. Not really animating. I'm just kind of messing around. But I did animate it using these tools. And thank you, Daryl, for building the rig and the awesome environment I got to play in. It's just so cool, like being in an environment like this and then just hopping in and just starting keyframe. You can just, you're in final pixels, final lighting. You can do whatever you want. Being real time is great. Okay, so the deformers. So say I want to do some crazy squash and stretch in this guy. Yes, it's a robot. I get it, but why not? Like I think I sent Daryl some tests where I did like a whole bunch of squash and stretch, and he was like, "That's
They're
kind of
great.
cool."
They're really fun.
So same thing. I go here. We can now nest deformers inside of a control rig that can be added on the fly like this. So this is basically unlocked the ability for animators to add deformers when they need them. So in this case, we have a camera space lattice, which if I have time, I'll show that. I do cover my talk, all these, so I'm not going to go too deep into it. These are just lattices. So I have a 2x2, 3x3, 4x4. I'm just going to add a 4x4 lattice here first. And as long as it's playing nice and not crashing, are you crashing? I may have cursed myself. Ooh, it
I
came back.
believe. There we go.
That. So I
Alive
have
another
this
day.
lattice. I can scale it up, right? And you'll see it has a whole bunch of points on it. And I think you get where I'm going here. You'll probably realize what happens if I move some of these points. And if I select these points and I move them, you see now it deforms that crazy robot, right? So that's just it's just a lattice, right? So you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this. I'm going to delete that. these are awesome, and they're so fast. They're GPU deformers, so they're running on your graphics card. I'm gonna instead add the sculpt deformer because this one I really enjoy playing with. It has like volume preservation and squash and stretch, that kind of cool animator. It's just slow probably because it's 6 million polygons. It has to compute this awesome deformer on that.
Yeah,
So
my
there we
bad.
go. So now it's added this guy. I can now do the same thing. I scale this sphere up. And this has, you'll see this has more options here. This has like fall off. It has side fall off, side multiplier, and aim mode and weight. So this one, you'll see if I start moving this guy, let me actually move it up a bit. And I move this control, you can see now I get kind of free volume preservation of squash and stretch. You can even rotate this thing, you can translate this thing, you can scale this thing. I can make them like a sphere crazy creature thing. And now if I animate it, you'll see it still animates as it would, but now it's through that deformer. So now it's doing all crazy stuff. You can constrain these deformers to controls of your rig. So if I knew I want this just to follow the head, I could just parent constraint this to follow along with the rig. Or I think, if I remember correctly, I could probably space switch this thing to the turret. So if I do this, actually, I'm going to go to the first frame. And I'm going to say, so instead of using a constraint here, I'm going to space switch it. They're similar. Constraints and space switching are very similar, but they're also they're different in a way. You have to play with them to kind of see. So now I'm going to put this deformer in the space of the turret. So if all goes well here, yeah. So here I basically just moved the deformer into the space of the turret. So now wherever I move this head, that deformation I added is there, and I can still animate that deformer, even though it is now parented to the head. Right. So now it's definitely in a weird. I can just even do this, and now it's this crazy. I don't even know what I made here. But the cool thing is it's handling all this stuff. So the control rig is running live, the constraints are running, the deformers are running, and it's still blazing fast in real time. I have not degraded my performance at all, not only on posing performance, but also playback performance. It's still running at 30 frames per second, whatever I'm animating at here. I don't render much. When I animate in Unreal, I really don't render. I don't do play blasts. I don't need to. Like I can be in this environment and just animate and hit play and look at the results. There is times where you might need to render, of course, and we have tools for that. We have rendering tools that you can definitely dump videos out. But I just want to show I don't typically do that. I just hop into the environment, I add the rigs, and I start animating. Okay, so that's the deformers really quick. I have one more example of deformers that I want to show. It's the same deformer. I have this crazy mechanical shark. I like to animate robots, and I like to squash them with squash and stretch. I don't know, it's just fun stuff to do. So I'm going to add this guy. Hopefully, if all goes well, it should have added a shark somewhere, maybe. Oh, there he is. Oh, he's broken. Let's just see why. Where's my animation? I have not tested this one, so
We're doing it live.
we are doing it live. Oh, the rig is not there. Well, that would explain it. Control rig. Where are you, shark? Well, that would explain it. The rig doesn't live here, so I can't show that. But anyway, what I was going to show is, how can I do that? Well, maybe I can just do it on this mesh. So yeah, okay. So you see, this is still deforming the shark, but the way that I set this one up is I wanted to make contact with the ground. So if I move this model, no, I can't do that because I don't have a rig. Never mind. Anyway, the idea was I had placed this deformer. It's actually in my talk that you'll see when the video goes up. I made this deformer for this character, and then I squashed it to get a nice kind of contact with the ground. And then I animated the shark kind of landing in the deformer, and it kind of made it feel like he's squashing to the ground. So those sculpt deformers that I used for the squash stretch on that can also be used for things like ground contact. You can even say, if you want to fix a deformation on like an elbow or something, you could add a sculptor right there and then just adjust the shape. So in a way, we've unlocked shot sculpting, where you can just add deformers on the fly when you need them, when you need to push something or exaggerate something or fix something that you otherwise would have had to dump the data out, another tool, do sculpting on it, bring it back with a blend shape or something like that. A lot of power was added there. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to my other scene. If it's still awake, I believe so. So it's this guy, just to show a little bit more on those guys on other examples. I have a couple here that I can show. I have this little, again, deformer on mechanical. I don't know why I keep doing that. We got a lot of robots laying around. So here I added the same kind of thing, and I've just tuned this thing a little bit. So it matters where you've placed the sphere. That's where the deformation is going to happen. And also it matters how big that sphere is, right? So it's up to you to kind of position these things and tune them so that you can get the results that you would expect. And then I didn't really show those settings on there, but if I pull this up to kind of get some squash and stretch on this guy, I'm just going to scale it in X. Maybe I want the legs a little bit. Position it so I get a nice result on it. And if I click now on, and I look at these controls over here, the side fall off. So just to show you what they do, side fall off is like how deep into the model do you want that volume effect to go? Side multiplier is how exaggerated do you want that? So if I crank that up and I move, now you see it should be more extreme. Let's see if I can crank it up even more. That and crank it up even. Whoop, now it starts to inverse because it's just too much. But now you'll get more squash and stretch out of it. So just really quickly with one thing here, you can animate. And if you guys have seen some of my talks before, you can do things like mouse mocap, which is really cool. So if I know I just want this guy to kind of like do this kind of bouncing, dancing thing or something, I can just set a keyframe, hit play, and just you'll see it's basically pasting keyframes in my sequencer. So just by moving my mouse and recording the motion, I've recorded him dancing around. So if you have some music playing, you just want to kind of animate that, you can do that. The other options on here, so fall off is just like the overall fall off of the deformer. So if I do this and I lower this or raise it, you see it's like 100% that movement. I tend to have this one at 0. Aim mode is cool too. Again, it's off by default. But if I set aim to 1, what that does is not only does it squash and stretch, but also aims it towards that deformer. So you can do some really cool things with this. This is kind of even more cartoony and natural kind of movement. And I'll show you why you might use something like that in a second. So anyway, that was one example. Another example would be, all right, I'm doing it. MetaHuman. Sorry, MetaHuman group. I'm going to deform MetaHuman just to show that you can animate things like a MetaHuman faceboard. This, which has the cool MetaHuman controls in it. But sometimes you might want to push it. So what do you think these spheres are? Well, yep, those are the sculpt deformers that I've added here. So, and I've scaled them and tuned them a little bit already. But you can see like just like pushing on this, you can get pretty broad movement. So if you want like to pull the brows up and then you just want to exaggerate a little bit, I can then exaggerate the head shape. So I worked in feature animation for many years at DreamWorks, and all of our rigs, all of our controls had something that was called like a low face squash stretch and an up face squash stretch. And sometimes some movies they're really exaggerated and used like in crazy ways. But yeah, here you can even get like variations on things. Even just like a subtle movement of one of these controllers, the character will feel very different. Right? You can get some really interesting things happening. Again, I didn't plan any of this. I'm just kind of like messing around. It's a live demo. But anyway, so it's still the gorgeous MetaHuman. I haven't taken anything away from that. I've just added a layer of deformers on top of it. And this would be where that aim thing would come in handy. So if I want the top of the head to also aim, I have this aim set to 1. That means as I pull it to the side, you see it rotates and aims. And if I were to scale this thing, right, I can do some really crazy stuff. I'm not going to do too much, but yes, you get the idea. You can do some pretty wild, fun stuff. I'm going to reset it really quick. Okay, so yes, super cool. What else? What am I missing? I know I'm missing. Oh yeah, I had one more thing that I was going to try and show. How are we on time?
Great. We can take as much time as we need.
All right. Okay, so I am going to try something here. Hopefully this will work. What I want to try here is this is the game animation sample pack. So if you're not familiar with this, go download it. It's free. It's got like hundreds of really cool motion matched animation of running and climbing and traversing. And in 5.5, we released even more. Now you can sprint and you can crouch and you can do like jump to ledges and pull yourself up and do a lot of really cool things. So basically what I want to just show here, as long as it plays nice, is I want to see if I could record myself playing this and then pull into sequencer and then animate on top of it. So so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up take recorder because this will be my recording system. I'm going to choose source and I'm just going to choose the player as the source. I'm just going to check one thing, which is under animation recorder. You can remove the root motion or not. I am not going to remove the root motion. I want to leave it there. And then I think I'm ready to record. So what I'll do is I'm going to hop into the game again. I'm going to hit this record button and you'll see this little timer, right? So now I'm basically recording myself movement. So I'm going to go up here, I'm going to climb up here. I'm going to just jump off, right? The motion is awesome. It's gorgeous, but I want to use it. Now I hit escape. I could save this. Sure, scene 133. Let me just see. This saved a take. You'll see it's dated by time and date, and in a folder. So I'm gonna save this. Failed to save. Sure, cool. That's fine. It doesn't matter. It should still be here. I'm gonna click this guy here, which says review that take. So you'll see now it basically loaded up sequencer with that recorded take that I did. So if you look at this now, it's that character doing exactly what I just played basically in the game, but now it's in the sequencer. And that means I can now already, I mean, you can totally use this to animate things. You can grab your controller and just move it around and play it. So now I'm going to hop in, I'm going to unlock this subsequence because I'm going to hop into it because I want to get to some of the juicy bits here. So I want to see what's going on here. So I can see my capsule. I can even see my camera. I think the camera that's tracking the third person camera is even in there too. So all that stuff is in here. You'll see this is just a recorded anim clip, right? So, and if I click on that, you can even see the trajectory of that movement. So I could just start animating this if I wanted to, and just animate some of this trajectory. If I wanted to kind of exaggerate things, I could use things like the animation layers, right? I can be like, I want to do, I'm going to go into animation mode because I want my animation tools. I'm going to close take recorder. I'm going to leave take recorder open because I don't know what'll happen. I don't use this stuff too much, but I just wanted to try it. What was I going to do? Oh, I'm going to actually add another character here. So this character is called the UEFN mannequin. I'm going to rig. I'm going to pull this blueprint in because I just want to show that you can put this on another character. It would pop up. There he is. Okay. So this is just a second copy of that same character, but this guy, if I had him in my sequencer, so do I have my filters on? Let's go. Filter bar visibility. Oh, it doesn't let me turn on. Interesting. I think I found a bug. Okay, cool. So what I want to do is I just want to basically take the motion of this guy. What is happening here? Okay. So I want to take this clip. I'm going to just copy it and I'm going to paste it on the other guy. So if I paste it there, now you see that they both have the same animation because I basically just copied this animation onto another character. And I can do the same with the transform track is where he's moving through space. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to delete that one and paste it. Now I can delete the other guy because now I've basically moved the motion. So there's an offset that I'll show you in a second, but I basically moved the motion to another character. The other character comes with a lot of baggage. It has the camera. It has a lot of extra stuff that you don't really need. So I'm going to use the animation layers here. If I could find my animation layers here, do this. I'm going to say create a layer on the transform because I know I want to make this adjustment. I'm going to just leave it additive. I'm going to just check in here that it exists. Where are you? Oh, it's empty because I didn't. Oh no, did I crash it? I did something weird.
We'll
Please
see.
come back. If it doesn't come back, then we'll move on and I'll reload it. And if there's more time, oh, there we go.
Oh, it had to happen once. It
Demo's
had to.
over. Anyway, I think you
Modular.
got where I was going with it. I recorded motion. I had the character in the sequencer. I was then going to add the control rig, like a layered control rig or something. You know what, Daryl? Why don't we move to you and I'll reload
I was
it.
ready for the mega jump. I wanted to
And
see the
then,
mega jump or whatever you were going to do.
yes, that is what I was going to do. So I will load it up again and then we can come back. How about that?
Okay, holding you to that.
Sorry,
We need a
everybody.
conclusion to this.
I know.
Funny.
All right,
Well,
then yeah.
thanks, Frederick. I mean, wow,
There's a
so cool.
lot. There's a lot of stuff in there. That's for sure.
I think we have similar backgrounds, so you know how excited I am about all these tools. They're really, it's amazing to see the progress that the animation team has made in the last few releases. Just crazy, crazy cool stuff. Especially the deformers. Like the deformers they're just dope. I mean, the fact that you can do that, it's amazing. So cool. I'm going to talk about a couple of other things inside of 5.5 that we're pretty excited about. Kind of picking up where Frederick left off. He was brought up that animation sample project, and a lot of that is using something called choosers. So the motion matching stuff can work with choosers, or they can work without choosers. In that example, they are using choosers, and choosers are now moving to production ready. And I'm just going to show you a couple things about them and what they can do. Obviously, it's a foundational technology for a lot of the stuff that you're doing with character movement. But they don't have to work just with characters; they can work with anything. So keep that in mind about choosers. They can be a system for choosing and selecting and triggering things. That don't have to be animation clip based. So that's basically it. Let's go ahead and first thing I'm going to do is just hit play. So I've changed my game mode. I believe I changed it. Well, yeah. So we've gone into a character based game mode. Prior to that, I think I was in a vehicle based mode. If I remember correctly. See, okay, this is great. So I'm going to run around here, and I'm actually running over to this backside of my build, and I'm sharing my screen, right? I didn't look to see on
Yeah.
Discord, but I
Yep, you're
assume
good.
I'm no one's yelling at me, so I'm thinking that I'm sharing. What I did is I just pulled in one of the example content samples, which is a great resource inside of Epic. Like the things that are in the marketplace are great. The sample projects we make are great tools to rip apart and learn with. This is part of the example content. So make sure you go into there because they have examples for a lot of the functionality inside of Unreal Engine. And this is one of the chooser examples. There's a few of them. And as I jump on this little hotspot right here, it's going to start playing back some animation. And as I grab these handles, you'll see that it's basically going to be going through and changing the animation based on the selection of that slider. So ultimately, these sliders are feeding into and driving a chooser. And the thing that's kind of cool about this is if we just kill that and we go to our content browser. Um, Inside of here, I've got a few different choosers. So if we look at this first one, what we're doing with so they're basically the first step of the chooser. This first chooser is essentially looking at this Boolean switch, and from that Boolean switch, it's going to decide whether or not it wants to use a chooser that drives the movement for the death, or the chooser that drives the movement that we were just looking at because we never threw that Boolean. So essentially, it's a layered situation that's happening here. Now, keep in mind you can now do nested layers inside of choosers. That's a new functionality that we added. So if you wanted to, you can do a nested chooser. In this example, we're not doing it, but you could actually do the nesting directly in one chooser, inside of one chooser, as opposed to having multiple choosers connected to each other, which was sort of I wouldn't say it's a legacy workflow. It's just a different approach. So the nesting is new in 5.5. Another thing that's worth mentioning that's also new in 5.5 with choosers is we have we've expanded the list of things that you can do. Most importantly, we've added randomize. So this one is really great because it allows it to run a randomization of all the different things that the chooser might have the ability to select from. So different basic filters and outputs and things like that. This list is expanded. There's more options in 5.5, as well as this randomizer, which is really that's to me the big one. And as I mentioned, it doesn't have to just be uh, objects that are animation clip based. It can also be, any asset. So if we look in our asset window, I got to pull it over here. Sorry about that. You can see that it's not just clips. It could be sounds. It could be anything. Could be driven from a chooser. So just keep that in mind. I think most of the examples we have are honestly just using animation, but it is a very flexible system that gives you the ability to do more if you wanted to. So let's just delete that guy and pull up another one of these guys. So if we let's grab, oops, I don't want to be full screen. Let's not do that. Come here, come back. Uh-oh,
Adamant.
it's sinking, it's sinking. It's gonna come back to life. Ooh, I might be following in Frederick's footsteps here and bringing it down also.
Oh no.
Oh no. Okay, that's weird. I can't close this window down. So that window's unhappy, and that's gonna create a problem for me because that's coming up.
Can you reset your layout maybe? Sometimes that helps.
No, I mean it's frozen. Like I can't grab it, I can't move it, I can't. Hold
Weird.
on, let's try hitting F11. F11, F10. No, can't close it. Oh, I hosed it. Okay, Frederick, can you take back over? And I'm
I can.
gonna
We'll
I'm
swap.
gonna
Bouncing back and forth.
task manager and kill this sucker. All right.
All right. So this is where I left off before it so rudely kicked me out. What is it doing?
Rude. Unbelievable.
So all I've done is I've done the same thing. I've cleaned it up. As long as I do this properly this time, it shouldn't crash. If it crashes, then we have a problem I need to work on. Okay, layers. I was gonna select the character and put this in a layer, adjust, and I'm gonna set a keyframe on this, and I'm just gonna move him. So this was the same thing I had recorded, right? There's a transform that you just need to adjust for. So I'm gonna move this down and I'm gonna rotate it 90 degrees. I forget the exact values, but it's like -90 and I don't know, 100 units in Y or something. So now it should now be the character animating in the trajectory and jumping off the thing. Boom, cool. So this is really just the raw anim sequence and the transform. So that's all the data that's here, but it all came from me playing it. So now I have a few options. I can bake this to a control rig. So if I right click and say bake to control rig, I can pick the mannequin body, sure. I'll do that first to show what that did. I'll just leave those settings. It should bake it now. So yeah, so now all that animation has been baked to the control rig. So again, I could use animation layers to animate this wiggly, squiggly data that is on every control, right? But that's very heavy-handed because say I wanted to kind of blend this clip with a walk and then a run at the end. I wanted to kind of stitch things together. This is a very destructive workflow because you're baking into the controls of the rig. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to make this thing active again. It goes back to using a clip. And I'm going to show something which we've definitely talked about before. I think Greg covered it in the last one of these is layered control rigs. But this is another good use for it. So I'm going to add, instead of baking to the control rig, what I'm going to do is click on this layered button and then choose the mannequin body. And I'm going to add it as a layered control rig. So now you'll see it still animates as if it was baked to the controls, but these controls have no keyframes on them. So I can just animate this guy now additively. So if I just did this and I hit play, he will now go through that same animation with that kind of crouchy, weird one keyframe, right? I'm going to undo that because so here maybe I just want to kind of adjust something like, what if I just wanted to kind of exaggerate this thing here? Actually, I can fix this problem where he goes through the thing. I can say, I'm gonna actually do that on this adjustment layer. I'm gonna keyframe this, and I'm gonna keyframe when he lands up here again, because I know those are the points that I want to kind of keep intact. Now here, I'm gonna slide him back a little bit so that his hand makes contact with that. Now between this keyframe and this keyframe, he kind of ends up here, and then I can just make some adjustments. I'm just kind of roughing this in, not really spending much time, but maybe exaggerate him going up a little bit higher. So now I've just made a little tweak there, right? So like that. And then same thing here, I can do an adjustment where I know he's going to land like here. So I set a keyframe on there, and I know that he's gonna take off about here. I do this, and then I go into the peak of my arc, and I just move this up. So now you can see, I can do this too. Just kind of adjust that trajectory a little bit. So now he should have a little bit more hang time and jump higher than what I had recorded there, right? So that, and of course, on top of that, because it's a layered control rig, I can also animate the arms and stuff. If I know that I want, I don't know, so you see this added keyframe on this control rig, I can just animate the arm a little bit. I don't know what's going on there with the display there. Popping back, figure that out. And then go back to like a 0 key. Control I is the hotkey for setting 0 keys on layered control rig. So there you see I did a little adjust on his arm. And now I can use this for a cinematic. I'm going to make a camera real quick. I'm going to say, let's put the camera kind of near where he ends. This. And then that. I'm going to animate this camera transform. And maybe as he flies up in the air, I'm going to up at him like this. And maybe like, now I've just basically set a few keyframes on the camera. Ooh, I could make it come down faster. That, again, you can see you can use this stuff to make cinematics really easily. It's like machinima, right? You're recording yourself playing, putting into sequencers, adding cameras, making shots. Yeah. So the other cool thing, one more cool thing, sorry, lots of stuff to show. So many toys. I get so excited about this stuff. It's so fun to play with.
We do
I
too.
just have to animate. I always have to animate. It's just fun. Okay, so what I want to show is time warp. So time warp are awesome. You can do time warp on a global, like the whole, I can do a time warp on the whole shot. So everything, the camera, the character, everything, props. So I can do play rate curve, which is kind of the speed of playback. I can also use a time warp curve. So instead of that, I just want to time warp just this character leaping like in this section. I just want it to like go into slow motion. So I can do it just on this animation sequence. I just hit this plus sign next to the clip. I go add time warp and I say time warp curve. And what that did, you'll see that's where this indicator columns that I mentioned earlier, indicators, is just that column at the end. This is just showing you that you are using a time warp curve on this anim clip. So right now it's the same animation, same timing, everything. But the cool thing is now there's a time warp track here. And you'll see this is just a curve. This is just a curve going from the beginning of my shot to the end of my shot. And if I start playing with this curve, like I set a keyframe here, oops. Well, but I'm not going to worry about it right now. Let me go back to my time warp. Where are you? Where did you go? Could be because I'm in a layer. You know what? I'm just going to merge these because I don't want to fight it. Where are you? Hmm. Something's going on. Not happy. Doesn't like me right now. Oh, I deleted the clip? No, I didn't. What is going on? Wow, I really messed it up. Well, that stinks. I could try doing this. No, it's not gonna let me. Wow. We are just full of fun today.
We're laughing.
Anyway, if that had worked, it would have allowed me to, I don't know what happened. That's really bizarre. We will definitely look into that. Yeah, time warp would let you slow down time and make things slow motion, and you should have a curve for it that would handle it, but it's not playing nice with me, for me. Should have worked. Let me try one more thing. Just do. Never mind. I'm not going to go into it.
We can if you want to.
No, it's all right.
Yeah, we can come back to you. I'll
Okay.
take over. I'll show my thing, and then we'll come back.
All right.
Yeah.
We can switch back onto me. I can finish up that chooser.
Um, all right. There we go. You should be able to pull it up, I believe.
You guys want to pop back and forth between Frederick and myself for a second while he cleans that up?
Yeah, it looks like yeah, go ahead and just click into the editor real quick and we should be able to.
Let me know
There we
when you're
go.
live.
There we go. Got you pulled up.
All right. So before I somehow made a window go into a position that I couldn't shrink it back down. It's the same window. So I basically pulled up the chooser table that's showing the damage strength right now. And I have it in a debug mode. So this is new in 5.5, the ability to actually see these clips in this kind of debug mode as they're triggering. So you can see that little arrow kind of just going through and randomly I'm sitting on the trigger spot that's making that go, hitting between these different animation takes for damage light, right? And you can see all the color coding that's also on the two columns on to the right there. So as I start to move this around, if I go in here and grab and move this to medium, you can see that now those clips are going to be the active clips that it can choose from, and the ones that are red are no longer valid choices for the chooser to make that choice. So it just lets you visualize, what's currently active, what can be used to create the choice, and then what clips being triggered. And then obviously, if I go in here and start to change the rotation, it's going to change the overall clips that could be part of the selection process for the actual chooser. So that was all that I wanted to talk to you all about choosers. And so to recap, production ready. They can be nested. There's more choices now for generating the logic behind them, and there is a debugger mode that we're currently seeing right now running in the background as we do the gameplay. So that's kind of what's new with choosers. Hopefully that makes sense to you all. So I think the next thing that I really wanted to just touch on really quickly, and I know that we've been going for quite a while, so I appreciate everybody sticking with us as we show you the stuff. And as Tina mentioned at the very beginning of this, we're just literally scratching the surface. We could probably sit here and demo Unreal 5.5 for like 12 hours straight and still have stuff to talk about. It's pretty crazy
Yeah.
how many areas of the code get touched. So hopefully we're hitting some stuff that's resonating with the folks and the type of work that they have to do. So Mutable is something that is now included with Unreal 5.5, and it's a really great system if you've got lots of characters or assets. Doesn't have to be characters, it can actually be any type of asset that you need to create customizable sets of, and it really helps you author your game content, like you're trying to make a locker or a character designing tool or something like that. Mutable is going to facilitate the ability to do that with a node-based workflow that has the ability to leverage basically all the power of Unreal in a very artist-friendly way. So let me pull up a character that's been set up with Mutable. It's that same little survivor girl that we just saw that we were using for the chooser demo. And what we've got is, basically a mutable object. And inside of that mutable object, it gives us the ability to essentially create a bunch of different logic. And then that logic can be used to drive what the character is going to do. So the way I set this character up was I did a lot of the initial work inside of Maya, where I made everything as modular as possible. So if we bring in our content browser, I think if we see here if I've got her. Yeah, I do have her pulled out. So if we look at this, I basically went through and took, every item that would be part of her outfit. So the boots are separate, the guns are separate, there's gloves, there's on the helmet, it's broken down into all these different little pieces. So the idea is you make it as modular as you possibly can. And then in Mutable, we can generate some logic and some nodes that reconstruct that character that you can then use to very quickly with a simple system essentially make endless number of combinations. And this is how we're doing a lot of the stuff in our, we're using Mutable heavily in our own IP at Epic. And it's how we can handle the complexity of something like a minifig that has to have literally thousands of potential options feeding into the overall structure of what that character is. And the idea is that you could build a relatively simple rig, and then this rig or this logic between these nodes can go out and query a data table. So you can build something that has the ability to reference a database that might, you might say helmet. Okay, great. Well, I've got my helmet logic set up into my character, so I can turn on and off the helmet, but I might have 500 different helmets. I don't want to have to bring in 500 nodes and rig that all up. So I'll have one helmet node come in that can then go to a data table, and then from that data table, select which helmet you're going to get. So you kind of can build it with a combination of both of those. In this example, we're not using a data table. It's just basically the simple character. And the way this character is set up is she's essentially three parts. So there's the body, there's the clothing, and then there's all the accessories, and all the accessories are basically done as a third layer. Now, the thing that's really cool about Mutable is not only the authoring aspect of it, where you can say, let me bring the skeletal mesh in for the helmet. That skeletal mesh has a bunch of different components. So from that skeletal mesh, I can grab these subcomponents, these mesh selections, and then I can use those mesh selections to merge them back down into the claw. So you don't have to have every single thing of that helmet be separate. You can extract it inside of the Mutable node setup, which is what we're doing in this example. So all that basically then feeds in. We essentially are deconstructing the helmet. We're kind of reconstructing it and sending it back into this node that then feeds into the overall hierarchy of the girl, and all that then basically builds um, for us this little system on the right hand side. So I can now use this to just simply turn on and off, the different parts. So if I want to put her gloves on, it's building all of this based on this logic over here, ends up driving all of the controls that I have on this side that you can then tie into standard gameplay, blueprints and things like that. So that's basically what's going on with this. Now, the other thing that this does that's really nice is it also has the ability to clip and remove polygons in areas. So you can do basically like simple cuts and things like that. So that when like say I put a jacket on this girl. Let me see if I can find my jacket. Like let's put the jacket on. So we'll put a jacket on her, and you can see when that jacket's turned on, there's still the shirt kind of clipping through here. And I don't really want to carry around the polygons and the weight of that shirt. So what we can do is we can basically use these clipping volumes to go through and eliminate that. And really what the clipping volumes are they're just really simple little polygon shapes that are used to essentially say everything inside of that volume, blow it away. So it's building for you ultimately a very optimized asset, right? The end goal of what Mutable does is there's the whole construction of the logic that's happening here, the ability to query a data table to expend it to thousands and thousands of objects with the logic that you program here, and it ultimately outputs a very optimized version of the asset. It can do texture combinations. It can obviously get rid of geometry that's not needed. So it's building this lethal lightweight version of your character with all the functionality that you need inside of it. And that's really what Mutable is all about. And again, it's something that's used pretty heavily internally in our internal IP. So yeah, she doesn't have boots.
Oh, cool.
She does have boots. So it's really simple tool that's very artist friendly. Again, to work with. Like I'm definitely not a programmer in the traditional sense, and I've been able to work with Mutable and get some really great results very, very, very quickly. So that's Mutable. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about, I think, was dynamics. Some of the improvements that we've made uh, to dynamics, and there's a couple things. Actually, we'll go back to Frederick first because we're kind of still talking characters. If he's ready. If he's
Yeah,
not
I'm
ready,
ready. Yeah.
okay, cool.
This
We'll
will be
circle
quick.
back, and then we'll finish with dynamics, and then I think we'll call it a day after that.
All right. Back to time warp. I got it working.
Woohoo!
So we have this guy. This is not time warped yet. So in this case, I set up a little bit differently. I found another project which is the same. In this case, I have a subsequence here and inside there, I have a camera and the character. So I can time warp a subsequence as well, which is really cool. So what I did is I clicked the plus sign and I did time warp. So you can add a time warp on a subsequence. So I have it muted here. If I unmute this and I play, you'll see now he goes slow motion for the jump, boom, and then it goes back to real time. And that curve, which I was trying to get up before, is just this. So if I want it to be even slower, I can just move this further, and now it goes really slow. And then the crazy thing that you can do, so if I go back to closer to real time, and I'm just going to add some keys, some random keys because I just want to. And then I'm going to put this into step mode, like this. Now using the time warp curve, oop, didn't work. It should have worked. Uh, it would basically take all the contents of that subsequence and put it into step mode. God, I'm hitting all these issues today. I apologize. And then the crazy thing is if you do a layered control rig on top of time warp curve, you can actually keyframe and animate while it's being warped by time warp. I know it's a weird thing to explain, but time warp is doing all sorts of crazy stuff with timing. And now you can basically slow things down and even put them into step mode and hold poses and then keyframe and animate on top of that, which is really neat. So when you combine things like time warp and layered control rigs together, you can get in some really interesting territory, which I have never seen that in another tool before. So you can definitely play around with it and see how you can use it. If I figure out a good like setup for all this stuff, because I haven't done this in a while, so for me it was like, I think it'll work. But yeah, so anyway, I powered through it. We got the results we wanted. There's some glitches I'm going to look into. I'm probably going to put up an Epic Dev community tutorial on this process because I think it'd be really useful to just show like people the steps on this is how you record, this is how you add it to the sequencer, this is how you add a camera, this is how you add time warp. I think that would be cool. So anyway,
That'd be awesome.
that's it for me. I'm done now. I swear.
Yay.
Well done. Well done,
Yeah.
Frederick.
Super cool stuff. Super duper cool.
All
All right.
right. We got
So
you pulled back up there, Daryl.
I'm gonna plow through this stuff really quick because I know we've been going for a full 2 hours now. So thank you again, everyone, sticking with us today. We're gonna finish off talking about dynamics in a couple different ways. There is a new modular vehicle plugin, and there's also a modular vehicle examples content. So if you load both of those up in the plugin manager, you're going to have access to this functionality. And most of what I'm showing is based off of the vehicle examples. I did hack my own vehicles into a few of them, and I'll show you that at the end. But it's really a very cool system, and it's called modular vehicles because it can do cars and planes and hovercraft. There's a bunch of different things you can do. You can do with the tools. So let's go ahead and check it out really quickly. So I switched my game mode in world settings to be one of these based off the modular vehicle. This basically loads up when you open up one of the sample projects. I just kind of added it into my project here. So the first thing we're going to look at is this is one of the sample vehicles that comes with it, right? So you drop it in, you drive it around. It's a little buggy, dune buggy that kind of goes through, and obviously you know, it's got some cool stuff that's happening right now. What's the modular aspect of this? Well, it's really the way you build it, right? So if we look at the way this guy is set up, if we jump over to my collection, do I not have it there? Must have, when I crashed, I blew it away. Okay, so that's not a problem. We can go the van overload because that's probably where it lives. Yeah, it's right here. We'll grab this guy. So this is the this I got from the sample project. This is one of the vehicles, and the way it works is you've got you've got your event graph, which is essentially hooking up the controls, right? So it's using the enhanced input to hook up the controls. So you can just grab that, copy paste it. You don't have to build that yourself. Like I would never build that again. It's like already done. So I'm going to grab that and essentially, hijack it. And then it's got a couple little things that are basically making certain parts of the vehicle not be destructible. So it's turning the wheels and all those things into invincible, essentially collision objects. So that's what that little logic does. You can hijack that and use it. And then if we look in the viewport, what we're ended up with is, that's the little buggy. And the way it works is essentially you can add a module. So if you just type sim, you can see there's all these little vehicle simulation modules. So you can add chassis, clutches, engines, and some of these you need to add an engine and a clutch and a transmission to get the thing to actually work. And then each one of these modules is going to have a ton of different little, like I don't need to add another transmission because it's already there, but you can see, there's all the different controls for adjusting exactly what, how that transmission is going to work. So the way that it's set up is each wheel, parented below a wheel. So you bring in a geometry collection. So the first step when creating these is to take your static meshes and make a geometry collection from those. That basically makes it work with the chaos physics engine, right? So you make a geometry collection, you bring that geometry collection in, and it would be, the BP wheel basically was that element, that geometry collection. And then below that, you basically just add a suspension arm and then you add a wheel. So you basically select the geometry collection, you'd say add suspension, add wheel, and then you can essentially just position these around on the chassis, and it's gonna build the vehicle for you. And it's modular, right? So I've got four wheels on my vehicle, but if I wanted to, I could copy paste inside of here and start adding in more wheels. Or in this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually just pull up a blueprint. And I think if we go in here, pulled it out. This blueprint lives in it's also in the example content. If we just look at this guy really quickly, come on, open up. You gonna open? Oh, there it is. It opened in the background. I opened it once. That blueprint is literally just geometry collection with the sim wheel and the sim suspension. So the same thing we just talked about. So instead of building it out and having to drag and drop it out here, I'm going to just drag and drop the blueprint that's got all that work done into it into this vehicle, and we're gonna make a six-wheeled vehicle. So we'll bring up the content browser. We'll go to my collection and we'll grab that wheel and we'll just drag and drop it in there. So now I've got a wheel. It's not positioned where I want it. So, we'll kind of just drop it back here. Okay, close enough. I'm going to duplicate that. We're going to slide it over there. So we've now got that stuff done. And we're just going to compile this. And with any luck, we'll see. It should work. In theory, we should have a six-wheel vehicle. You can do it. Oops, did I not? Let's see here. I maybe don't have the right one. Let's see if we go to van overload. Oh, there it is. So what is this called? DTO. Okay, maybe I have the wrong one in here. Let's see. World settings. Modular vehicle off-road DTO. Let's give it another shot and see. I did hit the compile button, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, I must have. Uh-oh. I dropped a wheel. So
Okay, we got some
that's what
extras.
the non-destructible stuff does. So I'd really need to either not make the drop for my player start so extreme so that my wheel doesn't fall off, or I'd need to set, it's a great example, set that to be non-destructible in that construction graph. Whoa, I was in the ground when I started. So also if you're if you're in a collision state when you start, it's gonna freak out. I should probably put a player start in here. That would be smart. Instead of doing it like, dropping from the camera's perspective. Yeah, it's not gonna be happy when I do that. Let's do one more thing just for fun. Let's go back into this vehicle and let's change it up. So instead of having the wheels back there, let's put the wheel here. Kind of just arrange these guys. I'm trying to make a dually. Could put dually wheels on my van. That would be cool. Oops. All right, that's located pretty well. And then we'll do the same thing for this little wheel. This is the fun stuff. Doing stuff just to be ridiculous.
Just because we can.
Sometimes it works out. Sometimes that's where the magic happens, right? Like, all right, so we got our little wheels. They're looking cool. This one's probably a little too far out, but whatever. We'll hit compile. I'm gonna close this down. I'm gonna just. Oh, I think that's probably why I blew up the first time. Is I think my back wheel is on top of that van. I don't know. I think if I'm like here, I should be. This looks like a safe spot to start. Let's give it a shot. You can do it. There it is. Yeah, let's go.
We
Anyway,
kept our wheels.
um, I made a ridiculous vehicle. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about is there's also a skeletal mesh version of this where you can drag a skeletal mesh around. It's in the example content. I made a skeletal mesh version of my van, and I already hooked it up. So I'll show you that really quickly. So if we go back to our world settings and we switch this to, there's one that's like skeletal mesh, right? Skeletal mesh vehicle game mode. And then for the skeletal mesh vehicle game mode pawn, I want to grab my van, skeletal mesh van. Okay. So, if you rig it like this and you want to use control rig to do a bunch of, crazy articulated suspension and things like that, or something a little more robust, you could, because it's got the full skeletal mesh structure, and the van just kind of, gets pulled along for the ride. We can just kind of park our little van right there. So again, the skeletal mesh version of that rig is also inside of the example content. All I did was open up that skeletal mesh and then re-offset the positions of the bones that drove the little buggy skeletal mesh to the position. Actually, it's a sports car. I re-offset the position of the bones from that sports car skeletal mesh to match the fixed points of my vehicle. It took all of 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do that, and it ultimately gave me, a drivable little van that's got, really nice art. There's control for the suspension. How stiff are the springs? How much initial drop does it have? What's the preload on the springs? All that stuff is kind of built into those modules, as well as, like, how much power does the engine have? What's the transmission? How many gears does it have? All that stuff's there, which is really cool. And then there's also these airplane modes, and they're really hard to fly. But here, I'll just show it to you just because we're here. We'll say modular airplane. Okay. We're gonna start right here. I think it has a thruster, like, that's on full time. So let's say, oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, look at me, I'm flying a plane. Uh-oh,
Yeah.
I'm losing it. I'm gonna crash. Let's just, boom, done. So yeah, it's a silly little system. It does some really fun stuff, and it's kind of cool. So hopefully you all like that. So the next thing that I want to talk about, let's get back to our. We want to run a physics simulation of destruction on this diner sign. So we have a really new non-destructive procedural based workflow for doing this type of destruction work, which is super super cool. If we jump into our collection, I'll bring up the most simple version of it. You know what? It's in here actually. Yeah. Okay. So again, based on a geometry collection, that diner sign is one static mesh, right? But when you bring in that static mesh, the geometry collection can actually go through and find each individual island and create a bone for it, essentially, right? So you can see that is a single static mesh, but it's made up, if you look right down here where my cursor is, 218 elements. All right. And what we're doing is we're going to build a bounding box around the volume of that. We're going to use some scatter points, and we're going to run a Voronoi fracture on that, right? So that fracture is going to come through and ultimately, then go back out and drive the geometry, right? So if we come over here and look in this window, the first thing that I want to do actually is I'm going to change the defaults of this to 1 and 1. So we're going to put very few points inside of the volume that we're using to run that fracture on. So this is going to be almost no fracturing, because there's that's not a 1. I want a 1 in there. There's hardly any points inside of what this fracture is working with, right? So if we play it, it's going to drop. It's basically like mainly those 218 different pieces, not a lot of fracturing happening. Now, if we stop this and rewind it and put this back to the defaults, we'll go back to 20 points, and I'm going to put a max number of something actually really high, just to really overdrive the point here. We're gonna fracture this into relatively small little chunks now. So this is the non-destructive nature. We're changing the number of points inside of here that this node is using to run through and do the fracture, right? So if we hit play, it's going to simulate it. Hopefully, you can. Oh, there we go. Well, lots of little pieces, right? Very simple. That's about as simple of a setup as you're going to get with this workflow. It's worth noting that you can record the simulation. You can play it back. There is a record and caching mechanism, so you can cache and then scrub back through it, or save the cache and use the cache baked results It's all built in right here into the same window. So let's look at a slightly more complex example of the sign. Same concept, right? We're gonna be doing basically the same thing. We've got our preview window on the left. We've got our playback and finished result window. The simulation window here on the right. So the way it works is if you click a node inside of the data flow, it's going to show you the preview window. Right now, it's worth noting that the pieces need to be watertight for the fracturing to work. They need to be closed watertight surfaces. If they're not, when you run the simulation, they're not gonna be part of it, right? So you want to be able to prune that stuff out, and that's what we're doing in this first step here. So you can see we have 218 elements here. Then we're going to go through here and we're going to find the geometry that's not valid, stuff that's not watertight, right? So if you click on that, and you can see after we've selected the non valid results and we prune them down, we're now down to 176 elements. So those are going to be the things that can be driven by the physics engine, right? So we blew away the bad stuff essentially, right? Which is cool. The next thing that we're doing is we're actually dividing this into two different sections. So instead of having one fracture, we're going to fracture the top path or the top fracture right here. This top fracture node is going to be independent from the geometry that's going to be driven by another fracture node that's a little bit lower, that's down here. So the way we're making that choice is we're doing the same thing before where we're creating a bounding box, right? That's our initial, like, give me the volume of my static mesh. And then from that, we're going to expand and do a little bit of math, right? So we're just doing a little bit of math there, and then we're making a new box that's just for the bottom, right? So, and then we're doing another little bit of math where we're making a new box that's just for the top. So that gives me the volume in which we're going to select the geometry and run the fracture on, right? And hopefully that makes sense. So that's really what's happening here is we make a box, we then cut the box into two boxes. We then take the top box for one fracture parameters and then the bottom box for the other fracture parameters. And another thing that's kind of interesting here that's kind of nice is we have these little preview nodes, right? So if I wanted to, and anybody who's used like Houdini, this will immediately make sense. Like if you turn on that preview node, it does the expand. So you can see it blows everything out based on the input from the fracture. So only the bottom part is fractured, right? The top stuff is expanding, but it's not fracturing because that top fracture is on a different path of data. So this visualization node doesn't really know what's going on with that top. It doesn't know what this top fracture is because that would be more viewed with this visualization node over here, right? So if I visualize with that one, you can see now it's showing the fractured version versus the non-expanded fractured version. So long story short, we're basically making some choices on how we want to fracture the top independently from the bottom. The end result is, if we play it, a sign that has just different types of things happening for top and bottom. But it gives you a little example of a little bit more complex logic in our non-destructive fracture workflow, which is super duper fun and very, very cool. So let's put a bow on it and kind of close it off by bringing up a level that's got, and we don't want to save that. It's got signs and it's got a vehicle. And if I grab this, it's got a six-wheeled vehicle because why not? Yay, I can crash into stuff. Oh, I'm stuck. My six-wheeled vehicle's it doesn't have the power it needs. Here. Let's try to, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna hit, I bet you I can knock a wheel off if I just barely hit a wheel into that. Like if I hit one of those, I missed it. Okay, I'm gonna try. This is hard. Oh, come on. Hit a wheel. Yes, I knocked it off. Oh yeah, there's a ball.
I was
Why
playing
not?
games now.
You know what? Oh, but here, it gets better. Look, because we have this thing. We have tools, debugger, chaos, visualize, debugger. This is new. And it's really, really neat. So if we dock that there and dock that there, and in theory, let's just, I don't know what we want to see because we're quick, because you guys have been sticking with us for a very long time. I'm going to turn on all this stuff. We're going to visualize. This lets you visualize what's going on with your physics, as well as all the traces and things that are in your scene. And it works like the rewind debugger on the animation side, very similar. I think I've turned it on here. Let's start our playback, and then let's go over here, and then look, we can record live session. Is it doing it? Come on. Oh, please Please do it. Oh, maybe it's not going to do it. Oh, I crashed.
No.
All right, I'm calling it a day. I think this crashed at Unreal Fest too, and I brought it back up and did it a second time. You were there, Tina. That's where
Yeah,
it crashed at Unreal Fest too.
it
Hey,
is.
ultra experimental feature. The Unreal Fest version of this presentation is going to get posted relatively soon. So if you want to see that visualized debugger actually do its thing, it's there. Or try it out on your own. It's super cool. It shows you lots of information and lets you see traces and all kinds of cool stuff. So that's basically it. Thanks
All
for including
right.
us. This is fun.
Thanks for being
I'll come back.
here. Please do.
I'll
Yeah,
come
this
back.
was great.
Wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be.
You thought it'd be scary? So scared
Kind
on
of.
here.
Live
No.
demo, internet. It could go sideways really quick. You never know.
No, we're all in this together. We're all here just to see cool things and have fun and experiment and see what the engine can do, especially with 5.5 officially out now. Being able to actually get in there and explore and have fun is the whole point of it. So I appreciate both of you taking the time to be here today and do this and hang out and show all these really cool things and sticking through the crashes. We get it. We're all developers. We get it. Crashes happen. So thank you for muscling through and still managing to get through to the other side for us. Really appreciate it. And thank you everyone who came to watch as well. I don't want to take up too much more time of y'all's day because I've already kept you here for a while, which I do appreciate. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure, is there anything else y'all wanted to talk about? Make sure we cover anything there.
It's out
Good.
now. Download it. Play,
Yes.
have fun, do something, crazy.
Break it. Send us your bugs.
Yes. Send in bug reports, please. Thank you.
Yeah, they do make a difference. They really do help.
Oh yes.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, for one last time, we'll go ahead and post a slew of links here in the chat in just a second. We've got the 5.5 release notes that will have your way. We also have a 5.5 release blog, which covers similar things, a little bit different, as well as a link to the latest documentation that goes over some of the new features that came out with 5.5, experimental and otherwise. And then there's a couple of really good talks that came up throughout the demos and stuff today. Main one being the future features 5.5 and beyond that happened at Unreal Fest. There's a lot of really great Unreal Fest content that was around 5.5 and the features there, so we'll get those up there as well. So make sure you check out the Unreal Fest stuff because basically every single recording there, well, every talk there was recorded and is being uploaded over time. So even if stuff isn't up right now, it should be within the next few weeks. So keep an eye out. Lots of really great content there. If anyone watching missed any part of this stream, well, too bad. It's gone forever. I'm just kidding. The streams are always posted in video format that can be viewed on demand on both our Twitch and YouTube channels at Unreal Engine. So you can always come back and reference any part of this if you missed it or you just want to see it again. Because there was so much to learn in this one today. I myself am gonna have to go back to make sure that I have every little thing that we went through because it was a ton. And as we mentioned a couple times, this wasn't even everything. There's still more
No, not
in
even close.
5.5. So make sure you check it out. There's a lot of really good stuff that came out with this release. Let us know what you think. Experiment, have a good time. If you want to keep up with us and the latest news and all that good stuff, you can do so at all of our socials at Unreal Engine. As well as if you haven't already, come join us on our Epic developer community, which is dev.epicgames.com, where we have our documentation, we have tutorials from both Epic staff and the community alike. We have our forums where you can find other devs, get your questions answered, all that kind of good stuff. Really anything that you would ever need in regards to the engine lives on the developer community. So go check that out if you haven't already. Lots of stuff available there for you. And I think that's it. I think so. I'm like going through my own mental list, but I'm pretty sure that's everything. But yeah, That's everything for today. So thank you so much one last time to our wonderful guests for coming and hanging out today and doing this. Thank you, everyone. Next week, we're going to have two Unreal streams. So we will have our usual Thursday stream, as well as we're going to be hosting another stream that's all about Fab. So if you have questions about that, things you want to know, make sure you come hang out for that one as well. That should be, I believe, on Friday. We'll put out the public information for it soon. So keep an eye out if that's something you're interested in as well. And that's everything. Other than that, thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.